Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. I'm here today to talk to you about how the eBay government relations team advocates for you and how you can help. My name's Jeff Michaud. I'm a member of the eBay government relations team, and joining us later will be Mark Yeager from our partner TaxAct. So today we're going to briefly cover these four things. What GR is and why it's important, the current public policy threats to US-enabled small sellers and businesses, why you, our awesome sellers, are the secret weapon in our fight, and how you can join our effort and make a difference. So first, a quick overview of the global government relations function at eBay. The government relations function at eBay operates like it does in most Fortune 500 companies. We lobby government and regulatory agencies all over the world on our customers' behalf. We establish relationships with government officials really to share the eBay story. We partner with other policy issue stakeholders in our ecosystem, and we support and advocate for eBay's current regulatory needs. But there is one major difference. We also advocate for public policy that helps our customers. And that's because as a platform and not a retailer, our needs are highly aligned with those of our sellers and our buyers. So in fact, our team's mission explicitly calls that out. You can see it here. All of our efforts are focused on economic enablement for our customers. Now, we accomplish this in three distinct ways. The first is lobbying, which is essentially just sharing the eBay story with government officials. The second is seller advocacy. We do this primarily through two programs that I'll talk about a little bit later in more detail. And finally is policy research. And this really is just data we publish that shows how you, sellers, help your local economies. Now, let's take a look at some of the big policy threats that we've been focused on recently. I'm going to speak to all of these threats in a little more detail in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about the buckets that the threats currently fall in. They really fall into these three buckets. There's tax reporting, there's disclosure mandates, which is essentially a fancy way of saying sharing personal information, and there's shipping. The first one I'm going to talk about is tax mandates. You may be aware that in 2021, Congress passed legislation with zero debate that lowered the annual sales threshold from $20,000 to $600 for filing a 1099-K tax form at the end of the year. What that really means is even the most casual sellers may start getting 1099-K tax forms in 2023 for their 2022 sales. There have been several bills introduced in Congress, and unfortunately, none of those bills have passed. But we are going to keep on this. And in fact, I'm now going to turn it over to our partner, Mark Yeager, who's VP of Tax Operations at TaxAct, to talk about a new tool for you to help specifically with this.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mark.
it. So hi, everyone. As Jeff said, I'm Mark Yeager with TaxAct, a leading DIY online tax prep software company. As part of our partnership with eBay, we have created a tax resource center with helpful content and information for quick reference. You can find this at blog.taxact.com/eBay. Here are a few things you should do to be prepared for your taxes. First, let's confirm eBay has your correct information. So these are things like your TIN, your taxpayer identification number, or your social security number. So this is important information in order to avoid what's called backup withholdings, where you may have to pay 24% of your taxable transactions as federal withholdings to be reported on your 1099-K. Also, it's important just from a standpoint of having your correct address information. If eBay can't get you your 1099-K sent to the right location, it just may delay your taxes further. One other thing to point out is just practicing good bookkeeping. This is always essential every tax season in order to get through the filing season properly. So I know a lot of people have a little bit of angst around filing their taxes each and every year. So it's important to save those receipts, keep organized documents of your transactions, because all that will be helpful in order to file your taxes with these new requirements. Also, it's just important to know your tax forms. And one of the things that's really important is really understanding whether you're a hobbyist, you're in this business as a seller for a business for a net profit, or just as a casual seller. So again, to be in for a business, it means you're trying to make a net profit. You're trying to do this for a living, As a casual seller, you're just kind of generally selling personal property that you may sell here or there throughout the year. And then as a hobbyist, you're not quite sure if this is the business, you're trying to make a profit at this point in time, but maybe you're going to head down that path in the future. And then those documents you get are going to matter when you go to file with the IRS each year, just simply for purposes of understanding how the tax properly calculates based off those 3 requirements. Some common misconceptions and clarifications. So this is not a new tax on profits. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you still had to report this in prior years overall. It's just this year the IRS is asking for an information return that eBay is required to provide to each of its sellers. At the end of the day also, last year it was $20,000 in sales plus 200 transactions. And this year, as Jeff mentioned before, those transactions are now down to $600 overall in sales. As in regards to whether all my transactions are taxable, they are not. At the end of the day, if you have income that you earn from a net profit minus your refunds, credits, sales, things from a loss of refunds, etc., it's really about your net profit. If you don't have a net profit and say you're a casual seller, those transactions really aren't taxable on your tax return. It's really only important if, one, you're a business, you really want to report your profits or losses in both situations. As a hobbyist, it's really about if you have a profit, reporting it, and then obviously from a personal property standpoint, a casual seller, you want to report only the profits from that overall. Also, as we mentioned about the casual seller, this does apply to you. This is a common misconception. So in that situation where if you sell something for personal property and you actually had a gain on it, so you purchased something for $500 and sold it for $1,000, that net profit of $500 will actually be taxable on your return. Now the IRS will have that information on a 1099-K, whereas before they would not have. Taxes are difficult, and it does take time to do it overall, so that's why TaxAct's here to help support that. If you do file your taxes through TaxAct, we do offer free TaxAct expert help, which ultimately gives you free access to a CPA or EA. I do appreciate your time today, and as a reminder, this information and more is on the Tax Resource Center at blog.taxact.com/eBay. And let me pass it back to Jeff.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to move on to the second bucket of legislation that we were talking about. This is actually a new class of legislation we're seeing that's targeting marketplaces and, by extension, users of marketplaces, primarily sellers. And these disclosure mandates are mandates that are looking for more information than's typically been provided before. The 3 bills that have been floated this year are the Inform Act, the Shop Safe Act, and the Cool Act. Now the good news is, due to efforts of eBay and others, we've actually managed to get Shop Safe and Cool removed from legislation this year. That doesn't mean proponents won't try to pass this legislation later this year or next year, but for now we've kept everybody safe from that legislation. The Inform Act is a little bit a different story and unfortunately not as good a news story. A number of states this year unfortunately introduced seller disclosure legislation that has a lot of privacy implications, and not all the state laws that were introduced are simpatico with each other, which can make things very confusing. We, eBay Government Relations, actually helped defeat 19 of these bills in various US states, but other bills were passed. What we're counting on is that the federal government will eventually create a federal Inform Act that would balance seller privacy with disclosure requirements. So we're going to continue to battle against bad state bills and push for a good seller-friendly federal solution for you, and we'll have more information as time goes on that. And finally, the last bucket, if you're a seller, you're familiar with this bucket. So shipping is something that we have been focused on for a long time. and will continue to be focused on. Some of the good news here is that this past year, eBay Government Relations, and other teams at eBay helped legislation pass, USPS legislation passed, that maintains essential services and keeps costs down for USPS customers. We are always working with the USPS on your behalf, and we will continue to do so the USPS continues to provide services that are affordable, reliable, and universal. The other category, long-time category for us, is trade. eBay's very focused on easing trade barriers and giving you, our sellers, access to buyers in more than just your home country. We are constantly working on this. We will constantly work on this. This will always be a priority focus for us. And with that, I want to talk a little bit about eBay's secret weapon in our fight for fair e-commerce legislation. So what is that secret weapon? That secret weapon is actually you, our sellers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Main Street program. I mentioned it earlier. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. But this is a program that we developed some years ago and currently has over 1 million members in more than 100 countries. And in the last decade, members of that program, mostly sellers and buyers, have generated over 5 million communications to legislators to help promote fair e-commerce public policy. In addition to that, we have almost 1,000 sellers in a program we call the Small Business Ambassador Network program. And this is for our most committed sellers who are really interested in helping not only themselves, but the rest of the seller community. I'm going to talk a little bit more here about the Small Business Ambassador Network program. As I said, we have close to 1,000 ambassadors globally right now. This is a program that's highly unique to eBay. And essentially, these are sellers who are taking their own time out of their own schedules to advocate on behalf of all eBay sellers. And they do this in a variety of ways. So they meet with government officials, they pen op-eds and letters to the editor, and they testify before legislators locally, at the state level, at the federal level, and in Europe at the EU level. So it's a really impactful program. There are also benefits to being an S-band member, being an ambassador as part of this program. That includes access to eBay executives. We do quarterly webinars. We often feature our S-band members via our social media, and there is potential to travel and represent the seller community in front of legislators around the world. So hopefully, you find intriguing all of the information that you just heard. And if you did, we have a few ways that you can join the fight and protect yourself and your fellow sellers from bad e-commerce public policy. So I mentioned the eBay Main Street program. Let me talk about that just a little bit more. That's a program that we launched in 2005 and was really the first of its kind in our space. It's a policy website that has all sorts of information that could be useful to you as a seller. Currently, we have over 1 million members globally who've opted in to get communications from the site, and the audience is pretty diverse. While it's mostly eBay sellers and buyers, it also includes government officials, members of the media, and other players in the e-commerce space. We publish regular newsletters. We give updates regularly to members. It's very easy to opt in. You can do so by going to ebaymainstreet.com/join. It'll take you 2 minutes to opt in, and of course, you can opt out at any time. One of the great things, and one of the most powerful things we do via the Main Street program, is what we call member grassroots. If you're a member of eBay Main Street, you'll be alerted to federal and state grassroots campaigns that could impact the eBay selling community. We created these programs so that the community can get involved, contact their legislators, but do so in a way that's very easy and time effective. So we provide all of the copy. These programs allow you to send a letter, or to tweet at your legislators, to call their offices if you so choose, and it generally takes less than 2 minutes to participate. These programs are immensely effective. As an example, we still hold the record for the largest digital grassroots campaign to date. In 2013, we did an internet sales tax campaign. For those of you that have been sellers for a long time, you probably remember internet sales tax. And we generated over 2 million letters to members of Congress. So we still hold the record for that. Again, we make these campaigns super easy for you to participate in, and they are highly, highly effective. And lastly, you can of course follow us on social media. The eBay GR team has both a Facebook page and a Twitter handle at eBay Main Street for both of them. Highly recommend that you follow us. And with that in mind, I'm just going to wrap up here, but I would ask that if you take away nothing from the rest of this presentation, I would ask that you just remember three things. So the first thing is that we, eBay, are fighting for you in the halls of power. You too, you can join the fight in a variety of ways that I went over in this presentation. And three, we have a program called the Small Business Ambassador Network Program that exists for the most dedicated sellers amongst you. And if you're interested in learning more about that program, you can go to ebaymainstreet.com/SBAN. And with that, I want to thank you on behalf of myself and Mark from TaxAct. We really appreciate your time and your attention, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event.